Before we begin, let me just state that TV isn't my favorite character. He's not in my top 5, let alone my top 20. I genuinely think everything against him is misleading or flat out wrong, and therefore want to clear the air regarding the anti-TV sentiment.
TV, Robot Flower, you've been selected by my formula for a successful team.
TV is a male contestant on the show Battle for Dream Island: The Power of Two. He has a screen which he uses to communicate with others and also has retractable legs. He's also the most overhated contestant still in Teapot. And dare I say the entire show. But why is he so disliked? Well, the answer to that question is complicated. No, it's not. It's actually really easy to find the answers because every TV disliker who has ever lived uses the same 3 talking points, which I will be addressing and giving my reasons as to why I think they're incorrect. Talking point 1. He does nothing. This point is not just incorrect, but also flat out contradictory, as well as this being the main point which branches out into the other talking points that'll be discussed later. One of the only 2 times this point could have actually made sense would be with TV from, well, season 1. But even then he took the chance to do something with his TV's Wishes and Dreams segment of the debut ceremony, unlike most of the other 29 who didn't do anything. The FDIA is another time when the argument could have been valid since he didn't have enough votes to join the season, so he should have been sent to the TLC. However, he became the host of BFDIA because he was the closest to the announcer. As a result of him hosting BFDIA, along with the flaws in this argument, many dislikers of TV believe he's better off as a host. In my opinion, this does a disservice to his character. Here's a list of everything he did while hosting BFDIA. Declaring challenge winners and losers, instructing people to vote, creating a cake at stake song, and revealing the votes at the cake at stake ceremonies. This is the norm for every BFDI host, and most don't even do more than this. In fact, most of them don't even do the third one. While this theoretically supports the argument, his role as a host justifies this inaction. However, TV was not competing during these 2 seasons, so these shouldn't count. So, let's go to the present season, Teapot, where he does compete, and see what he does in every episode so far. In Teapot 1, he shows all the names of users who voted Rover Spatula to join, displays all the votes during the final 3, and is used when 2 checks to see who got the second most number of votes. During the challenge, he suggests using tennis ball trebuchet, which the team does, leading them to win. In Teapot 2, he was tasked by Golfball to calculate the most stable stacking structure, and got mad when GB dismissed it in favor of the singular block, which is perfectly reasonable. In Teapot 3, he created a guide on how to make seats for the roller coaster, which the design for them went above and beyond, and it was applauded for it. The only reason they got such a low score was because Puffball made the roller coaster a literal safety hazard. In Teapot 4, all he did was calculate the reverberation rates of an awe seriously on the ground level, so his team could know the risks of provoking them. A way not to provoke Davids is by, well, doing nothing, which is what the entire team did after that, with some nearly fatal slip-ups. The only reason their funny plant died was because Eraser said,
"David smell like boogers."
In Teapot 5, he was kidnapped by the strongest team on Earth, but uses Bono the Robot Flower as a mechanical mind to convince her to self-destruct the ship in order to sabotage the team. The only reason Are You OK lost was a mix of Eraser not knowing when to shut up and get the job done, as well as teammates pulling out their world's strongest magnet BS at the very last second. In Teapot 6, he suggested to his team to find the Dreamberry, then proceeded to locate it. He is why his team got the highest score. In Teapot 7, he told GB and Pee-wee to temporarily ditch the team, which allowed the 2 to sabotage Just Not. He also transported his team to and from the volcano. In Teapot 8, while he did have plans to push off other contestants, he was taken care of early in the challenge. The only reason his team lost was because Eraser didn't just push Teardrop off at the very last moment. In Teapot 9, he sacrificed himself to save Eraser and Teardrop, who went on to sacrifice herself to save everyone. In Teapot 10, he helps earn money for Pen's debt, but when that didn't work, he tries to kill him to wake him up from his dream. In Teapot 12, he helped cheer Tennis Ball and Pen up after they lost their best friends in the team swap. He couldn't do anything in the challenge because he was glued by Needle. In Teapot 13, he distracted and led the giant David away from the hotel, but got his wheel stuck because the controller was broken by basketball. In Teapot 14, he piloted a jetpack and then served as transportation for the team. His team lost because 3 teams were already at the snowy mountain, while only Cloudier was taking on the volcano, therefore decreasing his team's chances of winning the overall challenge. In Teapot 15, he didn't participate in the challenge because he was too busy carrying it and made it possible in the first place. He was the one locating and displaying the timeline anomalies for the other teams to get to and fix. In Teapot 16, he used a screen to blend it as part of the background, which fooled everyone, and it was genuinely a clever use of his features as a TV. All of this proves that he has done something throughout the episodes. However, these examples bring forth a valid criticism that I find more significant. I don't know what to title this next section, so I'll attempt to explain it as best as I can. The lack of difference between character and competition. Let me explain this using Needle. As a character, Needle is relatively quiet and vengeful. However, as a contestant, she's assertive, resourceful, and fiercely competitive while also being a team player at times. In other words, I'm trying to distinguish between her personality and her role as a contestant. I understand that personalities often influence gameplay, but what I'm trying to say is that no one's personality is as reflected in their gameplay as TV's is. This does not mean he has no personality. While he rarely speaks, he would often use clips from past episodes, along with pictures in order to show how he's feeling or when he's talking to contestants. For some reason, TV dislikers are pretty inconsistent in their judgment. On one hand, if he speaks using clips, they'll say it's getting old and is overdone. But when you take that away, he loses his charm and gets called terms such as bland and boring. In fact, there's a reason for this lack of difference, and that is TV himself being fundamentally different from the other contestants, and he himself believing that his role as a mechanical mind is to lend a helping hand. Which is why, when necessary, he displays results out of cake at stake, and is obedient when he's told to do something, usually by golf ball, tennis ball, and most of the hosts. T-Bot 16, though, is starting to reveal what happens when he steps away from this, which does actually show the difference between character and competition, showcasing a new side that I genuinely admire and hope the writers will explore further. Unfortunately, though, he seems to have already garnered a bad reputation for something that isn't his fault in the slightest. Talking point 2. He survives over other contestants who are quote-unquote better. Another reason people also dislike TV is for quote-unquote robbing or just surviving over other quote-unquote better contestants. As I said before, it's not even TV's fault in the slightest, it's the voters. In the case of Fries, T-Pot simply isn't his best season, especially when compared to Priesthood BFB and definitely DFDIA. I do have a hunch that he could have stayed longer had BFDIA continued sooner. Same goes for Puffball, but she was only really better in Priesthood BFB. As for Needle, I think she got out because most of her would-be voters, me included, assumed that since she was popular, they could save another contestant and she'd still be safe. That and the whole "but they have T-Pot/BFDIA" argument, which, while reasonable, I am personally not a fan of it. In the case of Basketball, her arc with Robot Flower had already wrapped up 2 episodes prior, so the viewers didn't feel the need to keep her around. Same thing applies to Robot Flower, who was eliminated that same episode. And by that logic, anyone who was in the bottom 2 and survived essentially robbed the contestant who was eliminated. Nobody claims that Tennis Ball robbed Fries in T-Pot 6, or that Golf Ball robbed Puffball in T-Pot 9, or that Bottle robbed Beetle in T-Pot 13. In fact, in all of those episodes, it was TV who received the blame unfairly. He didn't even end up in the bottom 2 in these 3 examples. Honestly, I think the whole robbed argument is just a result of incredible mental gymnastics and is ultimately a really bad coping mechanism, because one cannot stomach the thought that maybe their favorite character left because they got the least votes, and therefore blame it on another disliked character who just so happens to be on the same team. It's so frustrating that someone who actively helps his team gets accused of robbing characters, while someone like Pillow, who actively sabotaged her own team, does not face similar accusations. At least not on the same level TV does. She caused her team to lose the contest in T-Pot 9, yet Nickel was eliminated in the following episode. Also, even though they were going to lose a member as a result of X's tags regardless, she indirectly caused Cloudier to lose another member because she really wanted to clarify that she and X were in an alliance rather than skedaddling away as quick as possible. But regardless of your opinion on the whole robbed debate, one thing is clear. TV survived over other contestants for one of the following reasons. They simply weren't at their peak and therefore weren't as popular as they would have been. The viewers may have voted for other contestants, thinking their preferred choices was pretty much guaranteed safety from elimination, or their central story arcs had already concluded. Ultimately, it's not TV's fault your favorite character got out, it's the voters. Stop shifting the blame. We've already had people shifting things and look at how that almost turned out. Though it didn't end up being really good in the long term. Also, some people can't just simply fathom the idea that someone like TV gets votes because people like them and their uniqueness.
No, every character must have 3,000 arcs and it should bring something to the table.
Yeah, I hate to break it to you, but a character could have a crap ton of arcs and still not be liked by the viewers enough to survive. Talking point 3. He's just a plot device and could easily be replaced by non-sentient TV. No, he's not a tool used to advance the plot. He's not just a tool at all. This gets thrown around whenever he does literally anything that advances the plot forward. So by that logic, this point nullifies itself because everyone is a plot device, because they all move the plot forward except Saw. I'll let that sink in for a moment. Anyway, onto the second half of this point. It seems like BFDI fans don't like it when an object show contestant is actively used as their object. Like, are you kidding me? This should be a main reason as to why he shouldn't be as disliked as he is now. The only other examples of this trait that I can remember include Match in BFDIA 5C, Pencil in BFDIA 11, albeit against her will, Pen in BFB 4, Remote in BFB 7, and Marker in TBOT 1. However, all of those were merely one-offs, and none of them actively get tomatoes thrown at them for doing so they don't count in this context. Two people who do count, though, are Book and Price Tag. Book is every piece of literature except a lyrics booklet in one, whereas Price Tag has the ability to calculate the value of pretty much anything upon making contact with it. And aside from your typical, at this point, what is Book not? Aside from a lyrics booklet question your reaction / sin video, she doesn't really get disliked for this, as it's not an integral part to her personality, and its inclusion is more optional than not. As for Price Tag, their value scanning is less occasional than Book's, and it's only really needed in certain scenarios, like during TBOT 7, where they traded items to get ones with better values to win the challenge. Safe to say, they get extremely few tomatoes thrown at them. As for TV, not only is this quirk an integral part of his design, but also his personality, and ultimately is a factor to understanding him as a character. And besides, people dislike him for this as if he has a choice. That screen of his and the fact that he's a mechanical mind is what makes him fundamentally different from most of, if not all, the other contestants, and similar to ones like Robody, who's also a victim of the does nothing comments, so he can't simply be written as if he was someone like Pen or Goofball. If he was, he'd lose all his charm as a contestant. Unfortunately though, people can't seem to realize that. My thoughts. So what are they? Well, I personally think the anti-TV sentiment stems from viewers questioning why a character with relatively minimal story potential compared to other contestants is still competing in what is intended to be a story-focused season. His lack of a compelling story in comparison to others such as Lai or Pin makes his actions seem less significant. This leads to the misconception that TV flat out does nothing. In reality, TV does do something, but his actions are more for the sake of the competition itself rather than focusing on his relationships with other contestants. And he's fine with that. He's meant to be more of a silly, laid-back, non-social contestant who's meant to help out with challenges, as well as contributing to, in some cases even kickstarting, arcs, while not having one of his own. What do I think the writers should do with him, though? I think they should have him act slightly more like his Teapot 5 self, while also putting focus on his Teapot 16 self, as I personally loved how we got to see other sides of him. Unfortunately, though, this change might be too late. Since no one on his current team is as disliked as TV, and because Bag's spotlight was focused more on Pen, Bottle, and Lai, I don't think he'll survive for long if his team is played up for elimination again. He might be able to get through one or more elimination, possibly against Tennis Ball, maybe even 2 if he's lucky, with his chances improving more depending on whether Bag doesn't put up for elimination in TBOT 17, or if TBOT 17 begins to merge. So yeah, that's all. And in conclusion, watch New M Goes Out. And until next time, I'm out.